Coming up today, it's business as usual for the embattled floor leader of Korea's ruling party. He's chairing a meeting at the National Assembly as the infighting over whether he should stay or resign intensifies. The Korean government lays out a $10.5 billion extra budget designed to reinvigorate an economy struggling to overcome weak consumption and the after-effects of the MERS outbreak. First, Korea's biggest sporting event of the year, the 2015 Gwangju Universiade, officially kicks off tonight with a grand opening ceremony. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Friday, the 3rd of July. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. We begin with news from the National Assembly, and amid the political feuding, the delayed House Steering Committee meeting involving the ruling Saenuri Party, the main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, and secretaries from the presidential office of Cheongwade got underway this morning. Today's session is garnering particular interest as embattled ruling party floor leader Yoo Seung-min is chairing the session to oversee the presidential secretariat. Now, Yoo's presence at the meeting is a sensitive issue in lieu of President Park Geun-hye's demands for his resignation following her veto of the recently endorsed revision of the National Assembly Act. Now, internal strife has been rampant within the ruling party as President Park's sympathizers have been calling for Yoo's resignation. The main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, is expected to question the president's secretaries over her veto of the bill, which would have enabled lawmakers to request changes to government decrees. Now, the House Steering Committee meeting scheduled for Thursday was actually postponed at the request of the ruling party before the two parties eventually agreed to open the meeting today. Wrapping up their near three-month-long probe into a major bribery scandal, prosecutors on Thursday indicted former Prime Minister Lee Gwangju and incumbent provincial governor Hong Jun-pyo on charges of taking bribes from deceased businessman Song Wan-jong. The special prosecution team alleges that Lee took $27,000 from Song when he was running for a parliamentary seat at a by-election in April 2013. They also allege that Gyeongsang-Namdo Province Governor Hong took nearly $90,000 in illegal political funds from Song in June 2011. The investigation team, however, decided against indicting the other 6 politicians on Song's suicide list, which named them. They include 3 former and current presidential chiefs of staff, this on the grounds of either a lack of evidence or expiration of the statute of limitations. The team, however, will continue investigating 2 additional politicians who were not even on that list: 6-term Saenuri Party lawmaker Lee In-jae and 4-term opposition lawmaker Kim Han-gil, this on charges of receiving bribes. The main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, labelled the result disappointing and called for a special investigation to be launched as soon as possible. Now to the latest regarding the outbreak of Middle East respiratory syndrome here in Korea, and an additional case was reported overnight, raising the total number of people with the disease to 184. The Health Ministry says the latest confirmed case is a nurse from Seoul's Samsung Medical Center. The hospital is now responsible for 89 infections, including 14 medical staffers there. Anticipating a possible staff shortage at the center, authorities have requested MERS patients in a stable condition be transferred to other hospitals. Now, no MERS-related deaths have been reported since Tuesday in Korea. The number of fully recovered patients has risen to 109 as well. Those subject to quarantine have fallen slightly to 2,076. Korea has unveiled a multi-billion-dollar supplementary budget plan to boost the nation's slowing economic growth and to help the country deal with the fallout from the MERS outbreak and the ongoing drought. Shin Se-min reports.
The Korean government will inject $19.5 billion worth of stimulus funds into the flagging economy in the second half of the year, as it aims to hold the country's economic growth rate in the 3% range. Of that, $10.5 billion of supplementary budget has been set aside to deal with Korea's most pressing issues.
The extra budget should breathe fresh life into the economy and stabilize the livelihoods of ordinary people who have been affected the most by the MERS outbreak. It should also prevent a sharp drop in consumer spending.
Of the supplementary budget, $5.5 billion will be directly spent to counter losses from the MERS outbreak and the ongoing drought. The remaining $5 billion goes to cover tax revenue shortfalls caused by the slow economy. The extra budget plan is estimated to raise the economic growth rate by 0.3 percentage points this year and 0.4 percentage points in 2016.
The timing and amount of the budget seems sufficient to quickly put the economy back on the recovery track, as its main role is to deal with the most pressing matters.
The ministry says it plans to sell $8.5 billion worth of new treasury bonds to fund the supplementary budget, causing some analysts to say it could negatively impact Korea's fiscal soundness. The government plans to hand the supplementary budget to the National Assembly next Monday. It aims to have the budget approved by July 20th so the funds can be released in early August. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Korea's foreign exchange reserves have posted another record high for the third consecutive month. The Bank of Korea says the country's forex reserves stood at $374 billion as of the end of June. That's up about $3 billion a month. The central bank also says the surge is due to the appreciated value of other currencies, with the euro gaining 2.2% against the greenback and the British pound up by 2.7%. It also added that the increased profit from asset management contributed to the hike. The size of Korea's foreign exchange reserves ranked 6th in the world in May, with China topping the list, followed by Japan. Now to the Greek debt crisis, and the International Monetary Fund has sent a strong message to the Eurozone, saying Greece's debt needs to be restructured and cut. The IMF report could have a pivotal impact on Greece's bailout referendum, set for Sunday. Han Dan tells us why.
While Greece and Eurozone ministers remain at loggerheads over the terms of Greece's bailout, the International Monetary Fund has taken on a bigger role by releasing a debt sustainability report on Greece. The report, which comes just a few days before Greece's critical referendum, acknowledges that Greece's current debt dynamics are unsustainable and need to be restructured. It says Greece needs between 50 to 60 billion euros of extra funds over the next 3 years and large-scale debt relief to create a breathing space and stabilize the economy. The agency says Greece shouldn't have to pay any debt repayments for 20 years, and final payments should not take place until 2055. The IMF's detailed review also says Greece needs a debt haircut, which would help take some of the burden off the troubled country. The IMF's report is expected to give Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras a major boost, as it's close to what he has been demanding from Eurozone ministers all along. Ordinary Greeks, however, remain confused, worried, and divided over the upcoming referendum. While the Greek government is going all out to convince people to vote no, some think otherwise.
I am very worried, but I am optimistic. I think that at the last moment, everyone is going to vote yes. It is a difficult choice to vote yes. Things will not be easy at all. However, I can't see a future outside Europe.
Some are upset about having the vote itself.
Next Monday, the government will either clinch a brutal agreement, or our exit from the euro will start. Whichever of the two happens, it is our people who will go bankrupt.
Eurozone ministers have ruled out any bailout talks with Athens until after the referendum. Han Dan, Arirang News.
Now, British oil giant BP has agreed to pay the largest environmental fine in U.S. history for the 2010 Gulf of Mexico oil spill. The company will cough up $18.7 billion in penalties to the US government and 5 states to resolve nearly all claims from the so-called Deepwater Horizon disaster. Son Jung-in has more.
It's considered the worst oil spill in U.S. history. On April 20th, 2010, the Deepwater Horizon oil rig exploded and sank 1,600 meters to the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, gushing unimaginable amounts of oil into the sea. At the time, U.S. President Barack Obama said BP should be held to account for the ecological devastation.
The American people should know that from the moment this disaster began, the federal government has been in charge of the response effort. As far as I'm concerned, BP is responsible for this horrific disaster.
BP and U.S. authorities finally managed to cap the well 3 months after the accident, but only after a staggering 650 million liters of oil spilled into the Gulf damaged the economy and environment of Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas.
And frankly, with this oil spill, went beyond just physical damage. We were threatening ways of life, how people had been grown up and how they were raised.
After more than 5 years, BP on Thursday agreed to pay $18.7 billion in penalties to the U.S. government and the 5 states to resolve nearly all federal and state litigations. The agreement is on top of the $43.8 billion BP has already set aside for criminal and civil penalties and cleanup costs. It's the largest settlement ever reached with a single corporation in U.S. history.
I'm proud to report that our state not only helped lead this historic effort, but negotiated a landmark agreement on behalf of the people of Florida.
BP plans to pay the amount over the course of 18 years. The disaster killed 11 workers and countless animals. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
The US government says it's urging Japan to swiftly resolve the issue of Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of women. That's what officials at the US State Department told former sex slavery victim Kim Bok-dong during a meeting in Washington on Thursday. Citing a civic activist traveling with Kim, Seoul's Yonhap News Agency reports that the officials expressed hopes for the issue to be resolved and added that President Obama himself holds a clear stance about the matter. Kim, who is currently on a week-long trip to the United States to raise awareness about the so-called comfort women issue, is just one of 49 surviving victims in Korea. Now to the latest on the bus crash in China that killed 10 Korean nationals, and families of the deceased are arriving in the northeastern Chinese city of Jian to attend the funeral ceremony. CCTV footage recorded at the scene has been released, hopefully providing clues as to what caused the accident. Kim Min-ji has more.
Bereaved family members began arriving at a funeral hall in Jian set up for 10 Koreans that were killed in Wednesday's bus accident. Tearful family members call for a swift investigation into the crash. The Korean government has also dispatched an emergency response team to the area where they will discuss how to transfer the bodies back to Korea, as well as compensation and other related issues regarding the accident. The wounded have been moved to a hospital in northeast China's Jilin province to receive intense treatment.
Among the 16 injured, 1 is in critical situation. 7 are seriously wounded, while the remaining 8 are stable.
The Korean consulate in Shenyang has set up a situation room in a hotel in the province to deal with the aftermath of the accident.
China is disturbed about this accident and doing its best to find the exact cause.
Although an investigation is currently underway, witnesses are pointing to driver error as the cause of the accident. CCTV footage of the accident shows the bus shaking at a high speed and crashing into a pier before eventually veering off the bridge. However, Chinese officials say it's too early to conclude that it was driver error and have not ruled out other possible causes. 11 people were killed after a bus carrying 28 people veered off a bridge and plunged 15 meters into a river in Jian on Wednesday. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
North Korea is accusing South Korea of advocating an unprecedented invasion of the North and warned that the origin of any potential provocation will be, quote, reduced to ashes, unquote. The statement came in response to South Korean Defense Minister Han Min-goo's speech on Monday, marking the 13th anniversary of the second Yeonpyeong sea battle between the two Koreas. There, he vowed to sternly retaliate against any provocations from North Korea. Now, Pyongyang's state-run Korean Central News Television reported that South Korea's move is a criminal act, driving the Korean peninsula closer to war. Now, on a happier note, the largest Universiade in history gets underway in just a few hours in South Korea's southwestern city of Gwangju. The opening ceremony for the 2015 Gwangju Universiade is scheduled to begin at 7 p.m. Korea time. It's going to welcome spectators, officials and athletes from all over the world. And this year's Universiade will also be the largest, as we just mentioned, in the 56-year history of the sporting event. And this surpasses the previous record, which was set in the Russian city of Kazan 3 years ago. Some 13,000 athletes from 145 countries are set to compete in Gwangju, and South Korea has sent its largest ever delegation with 516 athletes and officials partaking in all of the 21 sporting categories. Well, those are stories we have for you on this Friday lunchtime here in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out our website, arirang.co.kr/news. Have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.